Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Clarissa Shields could fight in Africa. And that's no surprise, seeing that the UK boxers with Nigerian heritage had a lot of recent action out there. And I think this matters, especially since with her new team, they seem to have some connections in Africa. Now, we know boxing is always evolving. There's a lot going on with Turkey al Sheikh. When Turkey's in the house, every day is Thanksgiving. A lot going on with Eddie Hearn. We know Anthony Joshua was going to go fight in Africa. He ended up getting the Jake Paul fight. Lawrence Okoli. There were a bunch of fighters who recently fought in Africa, in particular fighters with Nigerian heritage. But boxing is always evolving, and one of the most exciting threads in the sport right now is the emergence and, re-emergence of the British fighters, in particular with Nigerian heritage, dominating high-profile cards and winning massive crowds. Now, what's interesting when you talk about Africa, but in particular what happened there with a lot of the UK fighters, it's just understanding that Nigeria's diaspora in the UK has produced some of the hardest hitting, technically gifted, and culturally charismatic boxers in the world. And their recent matches have shown that this is not a trend, it's a movement. As a result, it may have opened the doors for female fighters to come from not only the UK, but from the United States and come to Africa and fight. Now, one thing's for sure is these fighters carry more than fists, and I'm talking about the guys and girls with Nigerian heritage, but in particular all the guys who just fought out there. They carry that identity, pride, and connection to two powerful cultures: British boxing tradition and Nigerian heart. Now, Deontay Wilder has come out and has showed pride in his Nigerian roots based on some research that he's done, recognizes his bloodline actually traces back, I believe, to Nigeria. Could be from the Igbo tribe, right? Don't quote me on that, because I'm getting it off the internet and you never know what the hell is true or not, but I did hear Deontay Wilder say something along those lines. But the bottom line is, when these guys with that Nigerian heart step into the ring, it's more than a fight. It's representation. Fans aren't just cheering for wins, they're celebrating heritage, history, and the idea that boxing belongs to everyone who honors it. The recent event featured many of these UK fighters, according to the research I've done, and the promoters, says that it was a massive success, not just in ticket sales, not just in performance, but in electric energy in the arena, the crowd responses, and the social media buzz that followed. These aren't niche fights anymore, people. They're main event quality. And more importantly, they're culturally significant. They resonate with Nigerian fans across the globe. In London, Lagos, Birmingham, and every diaspora city where people see themselves in fighters they love. And the level of competition continues to rise. So much so that there could be an interest in female fighters being invited to come over there and fight. Clarissa Shields in particular, she did mention there's a possibility of her going to fight in Africa. And I think we just have to understand, as the competition continues to rise, a lot of these fighters, they're not just inheriting Nigerian heritage. They're expanding the narrative of what elite boxing looks like. And I would say this: if there is a fighter from the United States, male or female, not just Clarissa Shields, any fighter who gets an opportunity to go and fight in Africa, in my opinion, they should have the proper testing done to just get an idea of their bloodline. So that way they can kind of create a narrative, almost like a coming home type deal. And how nice it would be if they do the research, like Deontay Wilder didn't see that man. maybe is a very large percentage based on the findings, right, and the data analytics that, maybe their heritage does come from Nigeria. But the bottom line is this. A lot of these fighters, they're not just inheriting Nigerian heritage. Some are learning about it, trying to find out. And the success is not accidental. It's intentional. Because all of these fighters, they have discipline. They're polished. And I think it's the reason we're seeing a broader conversation in boxing circles about where the next historic events could be hosted. We all know Turkey Al-Sheikh has talked about events over there in Africa. The PFL with the whole MMA, they were talking about having events there with Francis Ngannou. But to hear Clarissa Shields actually come out and mention that her team is working, and that could be an option. How nice that would be to see Claressa Shields go over there and face the only fighter that comes to my mind is, Shadasia Green. I mean, it's got to make sense, right? But to go over there with those two, and the buildup would be crazy. But anyway, let's see what Claressa Shields had to say.
I know where I'm going. After this fight that I got booked, that's still selling tickets right now. Yeah, after this fight, we already have people interested in me fighting in Africa.
So she's letting us know, but she didn't want to get into all the specifics. She didn't want to come out here and spill all the business about everything they have going on. And you could kind of understand that. And so that's why kind of shifting the conversation to Claressa Shields, which we all know, whether you agree or disagree, when it comes to Claressa Shields, it doesn't matter. Because one thing I think everyone agrees on, she's one of the greatest fighters, male or female, of her generation. So when she talks about work that's happening in silence, it tells you one thing. Everyone out here is trying to figure out what's going on. Where it sounds like her team are making strategic moves. Not every button needs to be pushed publicly. Not every deal needs to be tweeted. Not every negotiation benefits from early exposure. Claressa seems to know the business side of boxing. Her team seems to have a good understanding of the business side of boxing. And somehow, they seem to be working on some things that has everyone out here doubting them. And they're sitting back looking at us like, all right, y'all gonna see. I guess this is one of those situations where you got to let things play out, right? But I think, I'll be honest with you. All you can do is take people for their word. You know what I'm saying? You've always heard that saying, trust but verify. If you don't know the amount of times I've heard that when getting ready to do something and make a decision. But sometimes you can trust what someone say, but you can verify it and be like, nope, that's 100% correct. Other times you can't. You can just trust what they're saying. But I think one thing that happens with a lot of fighters is they learn that information control can be more valuable than reactionary tweets. I even think the fact that little bit came out is something maybe they wouldn't even want to really have out, but it was her way of kind of getting control of the flames. And that's when boxing fans, we do what we do, right? Everybody's out here doing it. We speculate, we make assumptions, then we try to have a conversation about it and make a prediction. And then theorize what the next steps for some of these fighters could be, what a sport of boxing could be. And it's not because we're trying to promote drama. It's not because fighters are trying to be secretive for drama. I just think it's because when fighters start to get to an elite level and they start learning from their mistakes, maybe they start to handle negotiations quietly until the moment they want that impact. Which kind of makes sense. When it's time to announce, not when it's time to brainstorm. Because there's enough goddamn confusion going on with the sport of boxing without somebody throwing us something that's an unfinished product. But what I will say is, now imagine Clarissa Shields with all of her titles and undisputed distinctions. We all know the story. One of the most recognizable names in boxing, headlining a card in Africa with the right dancing partner. This ain't fluff, people. This is legacy. This could be some of that stuff that could shut a lot of people up, especially me when I was blabbing my mouth for the last 2.5 months. Africa has deep boxing roots. It's produced legends. It has rabid fans. It has historical guidance, cultural meaning, and a market that still feels underrepresented in mainstream sports promotion. And I'll be honest, I still would like to see Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua fight in Africa, or Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou. Yeah, I'd be concerned for those guys because, Ngannou ain't really a boxer, but he's big and strong. Joshua, I don't even really like mentioning his name too much because I know he's going through a lot. But he and Wilder, they were in their prime at a point, and the fight didn't happen. If it was to happen now, we would still watch it. But I don't think it's the same. But if they have it in Africa, that would give it that boost it needs to have all the eyes on it, all the anticipation on it, than we would have had if they were fighting for the undisputed distinction like they missed out on years ago. But the bottom line is, mainstream sports promotion, the opportunity for that in Africa is wide open. Just think about a major title fight, whether it's a catchweight or full weight in Africa, they just had the guys out there, right? But imagine they do it with the women. A full women's card and Clarissa as the headliner. That would be historic. Not because of the location alone, but because of what it would signify. Especially if they had Shadasia Green out there as a dancing partner, because I'm sure Jake Paul and MVP Promotions, I don't care what differences they may have as far as with anybody. When promoters see that Wu-Tang cream, cha-ching, ching, dollar bill, y'all, their tongues hang out their mouth, wrap around their head, drag across their scalp, and saliva hits all four corners of the room. Because they know there's real money here. But if something like that were to materialize, which she didn't say it was, she just gave us a little peek behind the tent flaps, like there are some interest. And to be honest with you, it would signify global inclusion, representation, legacy expansion, a market hungry for world-class boxing, not just the guys, especially the fighters who are coming from the UK with that Nigerian heritage. Could open it up for bringing some fighters from the United States. You get some guys and women from North America to come over, especially if they go out there, man, and they run all the proper tests just to get an idea of where their bloodline stems from. And they can go out there and create the narrative of a kind of coming home type fight, because that matters. But I'll say this. I think this is just the start. If, in fact, something like this could materialize, and a fight like this could move the sport. Some people, I had a guy tell me the other day, man, women's sport is boring. Nobody wants to watch that shit. And I was like, hey, yo, McNicholas, hold your horses and stop taking it to the stupid. Yeah, there's a lot of drama out here on social media. A whole lot. But don't act like women's boxing isn't booming. From the Baumgartners to the Dubois to the Holly Holmes, of course, Clarissa Shields, Shadasia Green, Fran Sean, to Caroline Dubois, Katie Taylor Serrano's, Raquel Miller's. I can go on and on and on with names and different female fighters. But let's not act like women's boxing is very mundane and uneventful. That's not fair. But I tell you what, the sport can be moved because boxing thrives on big moments. A big moment is not just a big purse or a big stadium, man. A big moment is a narrative that transcends sports. And may he rest in peace, Ali in Zaire, Mike Tyson in Tokyo, Canelo in Mexico City. These fights were more than athletics. They were cultural landmarks. Clarissa Shields versus someone like a Shadasia Green could be that kind of moment. Especially if someone like Clarissa Shields is facing the opponent with the star power, name recognition, competitive legitimacy. You know, I talk about Shadasia Green. A lot of other content creators and people talk about Shadasia Green. And they really feel like, you know what, they can make the weight work. There's a storyline there. And there's some serious, I think, animosity between the two. These two have known each other for quite some time. A lot of people don't know the backstory. And I'm not going to give the whole thing because I've talked about it in other videos. You can go look at the videos I did with Shadasia Green was interviewed. Just listen to her story. She tells the story. But people talk about Shadasia Green, a battle that many fans believe could deliver fireworks. Green is a legitimate threat. She has real power. She has skills, and she has a track record that demands respect. That fight in Africa, which I don't think a catchweight would be necessary, she would probably just bubble up from 168 to 175 and just face Clarissa at the weight Clarissa is comfortable at, which is her being at heavyweight. I think it's 175 plus and being the undisputed champion. But I mean, she still got to fight Franchon Cruiser. Who knows what's going to happen there? But the bottom line is, if she is able to get beyond Franchon and then chooses to fight Shadasia next, if in fact those discussions open up and all of a sudden now Clarissa Shields' next fight is going to be in Africa, and then they say, hey, Shadasia Green, that's going to be the dancing partner. That would elevate women's boxing in a way the sport hasn't quite seen before. It turns a championship fight into a global event. So this isn't just about two women fighting. It's a statement. Boxing is global. Not just international, but truly global. And you know what? You can create history anywhere because the fight world is watching. And they will definitely be watching this fight if it were to happen, especially in Africa. Fans all over the world would tune in. It would create a serious buzz. And it's not just for the technical matchup. Some would say it's the clever, slick boxer and Clarissa Shields against the boxer puncher. Maybe some would also say / brawler free swinger in Shadasia Green. But it's more than all that. I think you got to really understand the symbolism of it all. Heritage, strength, could be some shared roots, depending on the tested, man. And just the overall evolution of boxing in Africa and women's boxing. And that's exactly why the speculation around Clarissa's next move is so intense. If she can get past Franchon, what's going to be next? You know, people aren't just guessing on a whim. They're reading into how boxing history is shaped. This would be a very, very big deal if any female fighter were to go over there and headline a card in Africa, in particular Clarissa Shields. Now we're talking about some serious history here. It would definitely help to shape boxing history the right direction if everything is handled properly. They see the success of UK events with fighters of Nigerian heritage, and they connect the dots. Africa could be the next great setting for a historic fight, and the people in Africa are saying this could be the next great setting for us to bring some of our American sisters here to fight. So as far as the silence on what fighters have going on as far as their careers, in particular with Clarissa's team being quiet shouldn't be interpreted as avoidance. You know, there's a lot of people who are involved with Clarissa Shields right now. A lot of people have opinions about it. A lot of people don't know what's going on. But what it does look like is, I think it can be interpreted as strategic control. Because a lot of people don't know. And when they are talking about what's going on, probably it's not really favorable. But I'll say this. Smart fighters do not announce every negotiation. It just makes me think about Terrence Crawford and Canelo. He didn't really know what the hell was going on. Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence. He didn't really know what the hell was going on. With Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, they were trying to work it out. You didn't really know the specifics. Even now, sometimes we're not really clear on what happened. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Nobody really knew what the hell was going on. Boom, fight gets announced. You're like, how'd that happen? Then you see a situation like Jerome Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz right now. Absolute chaos. Not Jerome Boots Ennis' issue, but because some of the discussion points on trying to make the fight and the internal rifts with Virgil Ortiz and his team, it's come out. But normally, fans are left to speculate because they don't really share that information because that would create chaos. But then once they firm things up and we actually have something definitive to go off, well, the chaos turns into momentum. And the boxing world builds narratives for free. Conversations, predictions, opinions, excitement. All of this becomes promotional value that no single promoter can buy. The content creators, whether they're saying good or bad things about you, that's all promotion. People on social media, it's all promotion. So when you sit back and you watch how some of these fighters aren't really talking about their next moves, like Clarissa's silence, maybe it's not being passive. Maybe it's being calculated. Makes me think about Terrence Crawford and Canelo again. Man, who would have thought that fight would have come to fruition? Canelo, his position, Crawford fighting that 154 fight against Majumov. It was a competitive fight. He did win, but it was a competitive fight. Who would have thought that after that Crawford would skip 160 and go to 168 and Canelo would have been okay with a fight where he was saying, hey, they're weight classes for a reason, basically suggesting Crawford didn't stand a chance. And many fans felt, well, if he struggled with Majumov, what's going to happen with Canelo? Then all of a sudden you find out, boom, the fight's been made. World goes crazy. But then again, that 150 million, that's enough to make a dog hunt and get Canelo from Guadalajara, Jalisco, inside that damn ring. So when it comes to Claressa Shields and her silence on what could be next after Franchon, there's so much talk that has happened. She's going to fight, have a baby. The bottom line, her silence might not be passive. It could be calculated. And for her career, I think that's great. And I think that's probably the smartest move, is to just listen a whole lot, talk very little about any and everything going on. I think that becomes genius. Because when she finally announces what she's doing, if she gets past Franchon Cruz. Now, I'm telling you, Franchon Cruz is coming to fight. I don't see how people just thinking it's an easy fight, man. Franchon Cruz is not going to come and lay down. That's be driving me crazy hearing people talk that foolishness and shit. I could understand somebody thinking that maybe Clarissa's going to win because she's always been perfect. She's unpredictable. Clarissa comes in that ring, she comes to fight. Like, that's one thing, I've always said. Clarissa, she comes to fight. But I also know Franchon Cruz comes to fight. Franchon Cruz don't play around. Especially knowing that there could be an opportunity for someone to fight in Africa. Shit. Y'all better expect fireworks when Clarissa gets in that ring next with Franchon. Because remember, they both signed to Dimitri Salita. So if there are discussions about Clarissa fighting in Africa, who knows? If Franchon beats Clarissa, next thing you know, maybe Franchon is the one where now there are possible talks about getting her over there. Or maybe do the rematch in Africa. You just don't know how this stuff plays out. But the bottom line is, the world should be watching. And that's why I'm doing this video, to throw that out there. Not just listening, because the men have so much going on, the ladies have so much going on, but sometimes people they don't hear everything because sometimes, like I said, they're being strategic and silent. You don't get it. You don't even really know what's going on with all the shit going on with the fighters on Top Rank, the female fighters. Like you really don't get much. There's not that much coverage, to be honest with you. Women's fighting is bubbling. There's a lot of talk about things, but not as far as the next 3 fights, lined up. If you think about a guy like Naoya Inoue, all the plans for him. They tell Inoue, you're gonna fight this guy, you fight Nakatani, you're gonna fight this guy. These are the names we're looking at. Ultimately, dream matchup, him and Bam Rodriguez. A lot of those conversations don't take place when it comes to female fighters. But it should. But this could be, depending on Clarissa, if she beats Franchon Cruz, her next great moment. This could be something that really gets people out here to start looking at her in a different light. Because there's some that look at it and say she can't do any bad. There are others who look at it and say it's all bad. I've been on both sides. But I'll say this. When we're talking about her as a fighter alone, nothing else, just putting on them gloves and fighting, I think a fight in Africa would do more for her legacy than a fight in Las Vegas. I really do. I think fans around the world would embrace an event that acknowledges deeper roots. Legacy, meaning, and impact could outweigh short-term purse percentages. And the fact that it's happened before, it happened there recently, these aren't wild ideas. In fact, events in global locations have historically sparked interest far beyond ticket sales. They capture cultural memory. These matchups, man, they matter. Fans get excited. Just imagine if they would have come out and announced if Clarissa Shields got past Franchon, right? Again, I'm gonna say it's just a conversation. Let's say she gets past Franchon, and now they announce Clarissa versus Shadasia Green, fight taking place in Africa, in Nigeria or Ghana, but in Nigeria, wherever, right? It's happening in Africa. Fans gonna lose their damn mind. That shit is gonna take over all the damn, gossip, negative commentary. It's gonna take over any and everything that's being talked about surrounding women's boxing. They're gonna start talking about how that's an explosive matchup. Now you got power versus power, you got respect versus hunger. Green has power and speed that can test Shields away. Few women have tested her. And they're gonna be like, you know what? This is the fight. This is historic, and it's taking place in Africa. And that's how the conversation is going to go. But the reality is, I think Clarissa Shields versus any big name at a catchweight is a big deal too. I just think Shadasia Green would be the easier fight where, depending the outcome, nobody would say, well, Clarissa won because of this or Shadasia won because of that. Nah. Because everything is pretty evenly matched as far as size. But as far as Clarissa Shields against a big name at a catchweight, let's say they would announce Clarissa Shields versus Alicia Baumgardner in Africa at a catchweight of 160 or 158 or something weird. Clarissa trying to cut down to 158 or something. I don't know if she can do it, but if she did, maybe she's weight drained. Maybe she's, not able to perform at an optimal level. And you got Baumgardner down there at 130. Think she'll come up 28 pounds? I mean, that's a lot to ask for. But the bottom line is it would still redefine boxing borders. Because the culture, competition, and history, that all equals a global event. But in my opinion, Shields versus a big name at catchweight, I think that's like a last resort. I don't know, man. That's just me. I think the shit flops. And it's no disrespect here. I just think fans are gonna be like, okay, this is cool. It's in Africa. This is great, but damn, Clarissa seems to be comfortable as heavyweight. Maybe she can get down to 160, but the idea of bringing up Alicia Baumgardner, who's significantly smaller than Clarissa Shields. I mean, I think people will be like, all right, well, this is a dream fight and it's cool, but let's be realistic about the outcome. So that's why I think Shadasia Green will be an ideal opponent. But anyway, who knows, man? Maybe on the undercard they have multiple fights taking place with Nigerian fighters, and maybe they have some Nigerian fighters versus, depending on where they're ranked, if they're ranked, fights a world champion from America. I mean, you just don't know. But it could be a night where legends converge, and Nigerian heritage fighters on home continent soil. Or if not, they can still spin the narrative that way, because we all know when it comes to boxing and the secret society, they're going to do and say what they have to make sure that they sell out these stadiums and arenas. And if there's big money on the line, they're going to do whatever they have to do to promote the fight. So boxing's built on narratives. It's not just about fists. It's about culture, identity, momentum, and meaning. The recent success of UK events with fighters who probably represent Nigerian heritage shows that the world, hey, boxing's not limited to old centers of power, man. Fans around the globe are hungry for representation, and that's what we all want. We want drama, not dominance. Big fights, historical moments. If Clarissa Shields lights up Africa with a major fight, they're going to prove a lot of doubters wrong. They're sure as hell going to prove me wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because we've had a lot of conversations just not really knowing what's going on. But to see something like that come off and be a success, it's going to cause a lot of people to ease up. Just when it comes to boxing. Outside of that, people can do what the hell they want. But I still don't think the catchweight shit is it's a good idea maybe here stateside, but for over there, I think it'll have to be somebody where you don't want anybody saying, oh, this is a fight set up for Clarissa Shields to win because she's fighting a small person, or for her to possibly lose because now she's the catchweight of 154 somewhere where she knows she can't get to. Like, you don't want to hear all that. You don't want to hear something along the lines like a De La Hoya Pacquiao. You know what I mean? You don't want that. The bottom line is, whatever happens, you're going to be remembered for years. And I think this is bigger than boxing championships and belts. I think this is much bigger than paydays. I think this is legacy and global impact. And for fans who really love boxing, for the men and the women, this is exactly why we watch. Because who knows, man, history may be in motion behind the scenes and we don't even know it. We always get crazy announcements, man, from Eddie Hearn and Matchroom with, Top Rank and what PBC was doing. Even De La Hoya has done a few things, and Queensberry. There's always something going on. And definitely with Riyadh season in Turkey al-Sheikh, when Turkey's in the house, every day's Thanksgiving. Always something going on that surprises us. Who knows? We could have Clarissa Shields, Shadasia, and other American fighters hook it up and fighting out there in Africa. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. In the breeze.